The ballroom was silent except for the faint hum of music echoing from the old speakers. The chandeliers above still glittered, but the floor had not known laughter or dancing in many years. And standing there, looking as though he did not belong, was Adrian Cole. To the outside world, he was a man of wealth, power, and influence, a CEO whose name carried weight in boardrooms and stock markets. Yet behind his sharp suits and perfect image was a loneliness so deep it hollowed him out. He had everything money could buy, yet when he returned home at night, the echo of his footsteps in his empty mansion reminded him that he had nothing that truly mattered. He had forgotten what joy felt like, forgotten how to smile, forgotten what it was to live. He had not realized how heavy the silence was until the day it was broken by the smallest, most unexpected voice. It happened at a children's hospital, at a charity event he almost skipped. He hated events like these. They always reminded him of what he had lost and could never replace. But something, maybe obligation, maybe guilt, made him show up. He stood at the back of the recreation hall, detached, scanning the room without really seeing anyone, counting the minutes until he could leave. And then he heard it, a soft, trembling voice that made him turn. "Excuse me, can you teach me to dance?" He froze. The words were so simple, yet they pierced through his armor like nothing else ever had. And when he looked down, he saw her, a little girl, no older than 8, sitting in a wheelchair. Her brown eyes were wide with innocence and hope, her hands clinging to the sides of her chair as though it were the only thing keeping her steady. She looked up at him, not at the intimidating CEO that everyone else saw, not at the man too busy to care, but at a human being she believed could help her. For a moment, he was speechless. He hadn't danced in years, not since the woman he once loved walked out of his life. He had locked that memory away, too painful to revisit. He knelt beside her and said softly, "But sweetheart, you're in a wheelchair. How can we dance?" The little girl's smile was so bright it nearly broke him. "You can stand for me," she whispered, "and I can follow in my heart." Those words undid something inside him. They cracked the walls he had built around himself, walls so high, he thought, no one could ever climb them. For the first time in years, Adrian hesitated, not because he didn't want to feel, but because he was afraid of what he might feel if he said yes. And yet, looking into her eyes, he couldn't say no. Slowly, he rose to his feet and offered his hand. She placed her tiny hand in his, and as the music swelled softly in the background, he began to move. Awkwardly at first, step by step, unsure of himself. But her laughter filled the room like music of its own. She raised her arms and spun them in the air, her chair turning slightly as though she were dancing right along with him. And Adrian, for the first time in so many years, smiled. Not a practiced smile for the cameras, not a forced one for business meetings, but a real, genuine smile that came from a place he thought was gone forever. That night changed everything. He found himself returning to the hospital more often. At first, he told himself it was to donate, to oversee the funding of programs, but deep down, he knew the truth. He came back for her. Her name was Lily. Each time he walked into the hospital, she was there waiting, her face lighting up when she saw him. She told him stories, made him laugh, and yes, taught him how to dance again. Not the kind of dancing that required perfect steps or polished moves, but the kind of dancing that came from the heart. She taught him joy, and he didn't even realize how much he had missed it until she gave it back to him. Adrian's life began to shift. The man who once spent every hour in his office started leaving early, not to go home to silence, but to the hospital where laughter filled the halls. He started listening to children who had been dealt more pain than most adults could handle. He became a friend, a father figure, someone who cared, and all of this was because of Lily, the little girl in the wheelchair who reminded him of what it meant to live. But Lily's story was not easy. She had been fighting a rare illness since birth. The doctors did not know how long she had, but she never let that shadow her spirit. She smiled through her pain, laughed through her struggles, and carried a light that seemed too big for her small body. She had every reason to give up, yet she chose to live every day as if it were a gift, and in doing so, she gave Adrian a gift too, the gift of remembering how to feel alive. One evening, as they sat together by the hospital window watching the city lights, Lily turned to him and said something he would never forget. "Do you know why I asked you to dance that night?" He shook his head, unsure. She smiled softly. "Because you looked like you had forgotten how to live, and I thought, maybe if you danced you'd remember." Those words hit him harder than anything he had ever heard. A child, fighting for her own life, cared enough to heal someone else's brokenness. From that day on, Adrian made a promise to himself. He would not waste another moment. He would not let silence and loneliness steal the little time any of us have on this earth. He began funding not just the hospital's children's wing, but programs all across the city for kids like Lily. But more importantly, he gave his time. He sat beside children who had no parents to comfort them. He played games, told stories, and yes, he danced. He discovered that happiness was not found in his wealth, but in connection, kindness, and giving a piece of himself to others. Lily's health declined as the months passed, yet her spirit never dimmed. Even from her hospital bed, she pretended to twirl her hands in the air when Adrian stood and danced for her. She never let him forget the promise he made, to live, to smile, to love. And when the day finally came when she closed her eyes for the last time, Adrian stood in that same ballroom where it all began, music playing softly, and whispered, "Thank you, Lily, for teaching me how to live again." Her absence left a hole, but her presence had left him something greater. A reason to keep smiling, a reason to keep giving, a reason to keep dancing, and so he did. He carried her spirit with him everywhere, letting her memory guide him to touch more lives, to spread more kindness, to heal others the way she healed him. My friends, sometimes life brings us teachers in the most unexpected forms. For Adrian, it was not another wealthy CEO or a mentor from his world of business. It was a little girl in a wheelchair who carried more grace in her heart than most people could ever dream of. She reminded him, and all of us, that joy does not come from wealth or success. It comes from love, from laughter, from the courage to dance even when life makes it hard. So as you listen to this story tonight, let it be a reminder. Do not wait until life feels empty to start living. Do not let loneliness steal your smile. Dance today, laugh today, love today, because sometimes one small act of kindness, one small moment of courage can bring someone back to life, even yourself. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to our channel, Everyday Grace Stories. Every story we share is a reminder that grace can be found in the smallest of moments, and sometimes the smallest voices carry the greatest lessons.